Mr. Fiorini.
I appreciate Charles' comments. We'll take those to heart, and hopefully at our next meeting in December, you'll see some of your concerns will have been addressed.
Okay. All right, this matter is put over to November. Mr. Knopp's in charge of the making sure that the packet comes back to us with all the alternative language and suggestions you can come up with consistent with what you learned here. Okay? Agreed. All right, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members, we're going to be out of here by 2 o'clock, no later. And we've got, I'm going to do the best I can. We have 3 items remaining on the agenda. The summary of the Governor's Staff Draft California Water Action Plan, Mr. Fiorini's paper and attendant issues on water storage, and we also have the staff report to us on the letter on BDCP time review that we discussed with the Science Board yesterday. And Dr. Collier is coming forward with drafts to, well, we'll do other things while they conspire. Ms. Pearson, file item 16. Ms. Pearson.
I'm ready. Well,
okay.
Good afternoon. I kind of feel like I'm late to the party since I know the Water Action Plan has been discussed already several times in the preceding days of this meeting.
Wait, is this your idea of a party?
No. So I guess I'm here to kind of provide some context, additional detail for those of you who perhaps have not been following the process as closely. About 3 weeks ago, actually on Halloween, 3 of the governor's agency secretaries released a public review draft of what they're calling a California Water Action Plan. And I just want to clarify, because a lot of people are calling this a governor's water action plan. Right now it is the 3 secretaries' water action plan. Now it may end up being adopted by the governor. I'm not clear on what final form it will take, but I did want to clarify that point. So today I'm just going to talk very briefly about the development of the document, generally go over its contents, and then talk about next steps as I understand them. So, like the chair said, you have a copy of this document in your board packet under the agenda item 16 tab, I believe. So the signatories to the document are the 3 secretaries, like I mentioned. That's the Secretary for Natural Resources, John Laird, the Secretary for Cal EPA, Matt Rodriguez, and the California Department of Food and Ag Secretary, Karen Ross. The draft is drawn really from internal priorities. In many ways, it is an internal coordination document. But it's also drawn from a variety of ongoing discussions that the administration is having with constituents, interest groups, department staff, and experts. And it's really in response to the governor's own request for a document that prioritizes water, flood, and ecosystem actions across his cabinet. So since the release of the draft, the administration has been accepting public comment via an email address that they have established for that purpose. And it's listed, I believe, on the front cover of that document. It's wateraction@water.ca.gov. Several stakeholder groups have already weighed in, some even in advance of a review draft. And notably, the Association of California Water Agencies prepared their own statewide water action plan, which sets forth their own priorities in hopes that it would inform this document. You have a copy of your document in the packet. I mentioned that. So I'm just going to quickly describe the contents and the structure. The plan is organized around 10 categories of action. I won't read them all, but just to get you started on the first few: make conservation a California way of life, increase local and regional self-reliance, achieve the co-equal goals for the Delta, protect and restore important ecosystems, manage and prepare for dry periods, expand water storage capacity, and so forth. So many of these are very familiar to this board. Each of these categories is then supported by a mix of suggested state, federal, and local actions in order to achieve those goals. And the timeline for the implementation of the action plan is 5 years. And by 5 years, they have indicated they hope to conclude the actions within 5 years, not just begin the actions. So the plan starts off with an emphasis on water conservation, imploring that we make conservation a California way of life. An example of one of the actions that then supports that statement is a commitment to expand state support and incentives for agricultural and urban water conservation in order to not just meet the 20% by 2020 and other goals in the 2009 legislation, but to exceed them. Under the Achieve the Co-Equal Goals heading, the first action is to begin implementation of the Delta Plan. And it then goes on to say that the administration, and this is the sentence that the judge has been referring to, the administration directs all of its relevant agencies to fully participate in the implementation committee established by the Delta Stewardship Council. Some of the more specific actions under the Co-Equal Goals section will sound very familiar as they're reflected in our Delta Plan. Restore habitat in the 6 priority restoration areas identified in the Delta Plan. Complete the BDCP. Implement near-term Delta projects. Finish the board's water quality control plan update for the Delta. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of overlap, and overall, my reaction is that this document is very positive in that it embraces not just what the council has been working on for 2.5 years with public input, but it gets to the directive of let's make some of these actions happen through the implementation committee, and that's exactly the kind of support that we had hoped for, and it's very positive to see it in there. So the 3 secretaries are basically traveling the state right now, making appearances to promote the plan and receive additional feedback. The idea is to issue a final plan in early December. That's essentially 2 weeks. And then Mr. Knopp and I can come back to you in December and report on the final version. Are there any questions?
Have you reviewed any of the public comments submitted? I looked at the list, but I didn't have a chance to go through and read them.
A few. Yeah.
Anything new, different, startling that caught your attention?
No.
Okay.
I mean, really, it's kind of like what we've been talking about in the Delta Plan. The most important aspect of this document is it's a prioritization. There's not a lot that's new. I mean, there are commitments to, I would say, the development of more innovative and efficient processes, which is something that we can all appreciate. But I think really we're seeing a clear expression of what the 3 cabinet secretaries believe are their priorities over the next 5 years to make sure that all of their departments underneath them are marching in the same direction. And I think that's a welcome document from our perspective.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to draw your attention to something. Even though this is a statewide document, it also, as Jessica just pointed out, is very favorable to the Delta and the Delta Stewardship Council's active involvement in our efforts to improve the Delta and meet the co-equal goals. That outcome is a direct consequence of Jessica's work on this. She's just done an outstanding job on this effort, and I just want to draw your attention to that and thank Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you. And really, all I did was make sure that the hard work that everyone in this room and in this building upstairs did in developing the Delta Plan with the input of the public was integrated as a foundational document in this draft, and so I think we all deserve credit for that. But I will say this draft goes beyond the Delta. I mean, it really is the administration's priorities statewide. We talked about the Klamath River Basin, talked about the Salton Sea, Lake Tahoe, so it does go beyond the Delta.
Okay. Mr. Damrell, you had a question? No. Okay. Mr. Johnston.
I will say this. I can't imagine the 3 secretaries running around California promoting this without some direction from somebody else.
Sure.
Sutter, perhaps?
I did say it was in response to the governor's request. That's right.
On the financing recommendation, it's identify sustainable and integrated financing opportunities. Do you know this is intended to be a 5-year action plan, right?
Right.
Okay. So on that piece of it, do you know the time frame in which they're going to examine the financing options? Because they mention a lot of things, but very briefly. I mean, they have the briefest reference to a bond, for instance, and don't
Right.
discuss that.
Right.
general obligation. More intriguing is the review changes needed, so already a judgment, changes needed to Proposition 18, which, local right to vote on taxes and fees. So is that something they're going to consider in this next legislative session, or is it indefinite?
I don't know for sure. I can find out. I've heard talk of, an expression in the governor's budget of some of these priorities. I've heard talk of, a lot of people are wondering if the final version will be the governor weighing in on bond priorities, but I don't know for sure.
And then, Randy, in terms of the 5-year plan, what do you see in here that looks consistent with how the implementation effort might go forward?
I think all of the governor's water action, the secretary's water action plan draft that deal with the Delta are in concert with what's included in the Delta plan and would serve as a likely place where we will focus our efforts.
I think it's pretty significant too, because it should the governor say, yeah, this looks pretty close to what is my position, it puts at one place at one time a list of priorities that must concurrently proceed. I mean, that's the thing that's been lacking. Everybody says my project first, my restoration, whatever it is. And this, if it works out the way I think the people who authored it want it to work out, it would be a declaration that for the balance of this term and presumptively a new fourth Jerry Brown term as governor, this is what he wants to see the state agencies achieve during that same time. I think it has the makings of a very powerful.
So you're saying that the governor promulgates this officially after the review process in a couple weeks, that this is the basis for the performance review that he would expect after the next 5 years as governor?
He might.
How far did we get in this?
Yep. And I think that would be something that might appeal to him.
One other thing, that although there is the co-equal goals, which it obviously references the Delta plan, but there are other components of this plan that reflect our goals, additional goals.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
Self-reliance, regional self-reliance, flood protection, all those things we've been talking about. On that, there's probably 5 of them in there.
Well, anticipating our next agenda item, which is Randy's paper and the panel that's going to be responding to it, when I went through this thing, I found buried on page 11 what I thought is the clearest statement on water storage priority. And the sentence is, the bottom line is that we need to expand our state storage capacity, whether surface or groundwater, whether big or small. I mean, is there a better shorthand policy driver? My experience is statements like that are drivers of policy because they synthesize a big, ugly, mean, complex set of choices and give some clarity to people who have to implement them. So I think it's a very important process underway and positive.
Yes, I agree.
Ms. Gray, you had no? Okay. All right, that's our briefing, which is, by the way, not a bad intro or segue, as we say, into item